They always say that practice makes perfect, but what if I told you that practicing can actually make you worse? What is up, Team ProGuides, and welcome back to another League of Legends video. My name is Christoph, and today I'm going to be talking about why playing more might actually be holding you guys back at getting better at the game. In this video, we're going to give you some tips and techniques that will actually help you get better by playing less. And as always, for a question of the day, what's something you've gotten better at recently? Personally, I think that my shot calling and decision making has actually improved quite a bit. If any of you guys are boomers like me, 30 plus, we need to rely on our decision making to actually get some elo. So I've doubled down on making better decisions, and yeah, I think I'm just getting better at that as I see my mechanics decline in front of my very eyes. Okay, so let me know what you guys think down below. I'd love to hear you guys' answers. Okay, the first thing I want to go over is actually this. Practice does not make perfect. I know that my grandma used to say this, but it's true. Practice does not make perfect. Practicing does not equal improvement. Practice is not always good. However, good practice is good, but bad, half-hearted, or even incorrect practice is not only bad, but it can be more detrimental than you had actually imagined. What practice does is it reinforces habits. If when you do practice, you're constantly making the same mistake, not calling yourself out, or maybe not even realizing the things that you're doing wrong, that's what you're going to get used to doing. Constantly pushing up and getting ganked, well, if you don't take note of this and make an effort to make a change to that habit, you know what's going to happen? You're just going to be doing it over and over again every single game. Worse yet, the more that you practice, the more you're solidifying that habit, which means it's going to be even more difficult to get out of it. So you need to be real with yourself and constantly remind yourself when you make these mistakes. Write it down, say what you're doing out loud, do something, do anything so that you don't make the same mistake again. The more used to bad habits you are, the harder it's going to be to break them, but you'll have to make some changes to stop those bad habits if you want to climb in ranked. If that's not enough evidence for you, then let's go over this. Why are some people stuck in whatever elo they're at with thousands of games played at the same season? Honestly, I know that some people just play for fun and it's not everyone's intention to go pro, but come on guys. If you're playing 2,000 games, you better be in at least Diamond Plus. The reason why we look down on these players is that we'd like to believe that if we spent so much time playing the game, then we'd actually end up getting out of their elo hell, right? Well, you could be right, but there's a very strong possibility that you're probably wrong. Go take a look at some of the challenger players, but a lot of the time, they aren't putting in 2,000 games a season. There are plenty of players who spend more time than challenger players playing the game, and they still end up in bronze or silver. At some point, it becomes harder to improve because with these types of players, they spend incredible amounts of time playing the way that they do, not the way that a challenger player does. Over and over again, they've done the same things without improving, and they're just going to make the same mistake over again. Playing at the elo they've been stuck at has basically conditioned them and made it their home. They feel pretty safe there. They've accumulated so many bad habits that they probably actually aren't even aware of their bad habits as a result. Speaking of which, let's talk about those bad habits because that's going to actually help you guys out a lot. But before we do, a quick plug. If you guys don't think you're good enough at analyzing your gameplay, well, you can just press a button over at ProGuides or on our app, and you can have any of your games analyzed by a pro player immediately. They'll take a look at your game, tell you exactly what you're doing wrong so you don't make these mistakes. We also have a bunch of amazing courses with players like Doublelift and other pros that might help you out. Oh, and if you guys are starting to play Wild Rift, go check out our Wild Rift channel. We have amazing content on there as well. Anyway, how you play and the little micro decisions you make or actions that you take are basically built into your body and brain, and it becomes second nature by this point. You are conditioning your hands, your muscle memory, your neurons to do certain habits. And look, if they're bad habits, there are going to be bad outcomes, like being hard stuck Iron 4 for the rest of your life. It might even be hard to really know what you're doing wrong though. This is when getting someone to watch over your gameplay can be helpful, but you can also do this yourself. You just have to be honest with yourself and look at the data. As you're playing, I want you to get into the mentality of looking at the patterns that you exhibit and the decisions that you've made and ask yourself, are they good ones or are they bad ones? If you got ganked, maybe you can't really blame it on how good their jungler is or how bad your jungler is. Maybe you should have warded. Maybe you shouldn't have pushed that far up. Maybe you should have frozen your wave, depending on what champion you have. If you die in lane, is it because the person you're playing against is just way better? Is it because they have a better champion? Or is there something that you could have done? Every disadvantage you have in the game is an opportunity to see if it's a mistake of yours or not. Look, sometimes it's just bad luck, okay? Yes, if your teammates feed, that is bad luck. Yes, you have some agency. Maybe you could tell your teammates, hey, we're going to win this. Be positive. That might help. But most of the things that don't go your way in the game are actually completely in your control. And I want to encourage you guys to always think about, hey, this thing happened. It was bad. How could I have changed that outcome? That's the mentality I think you guys should have. Smart wave management, intelligent movement, and good macro play are all things that can help you win games by just practicing and ingraining it into your muscle memory. If at the end of the day you're still very uncertain, your best bet is going to be imitation. Look at the best players and observe their habits. They've gotten to where they are because they do something right. Watch some games and carefully observe them and try to pick one that you want to copy. Don't worry about being unique or just becoming a discount copy of a player. You're not going to end up as a 99-cent store faker just because you tried to imitate him. If you could get close to faker, you're probably going to be a pro player. Take bits and pieces from several players. When you see something you like, for example, how a player likes to push a wave, certain movement patterns, maybe a jungle path, or general tendencies in regards to decision making, just take note of it and try and emulate it. Incorporate what you like into your gameplay and try to make those habits of your own. Personally, I love watching Doublelift. I love his focus on farming. I love the fact that he's very efficient. He gets those item advantages and then he acts very aggressively when he has those advantages. I incorporated that in my own gameplay and I got better. Little things like that. And also Mike Young, who actually writes some of these scripts. He had very unique jungle pathing, which I thought was very efficient, copied his jungle pathing, and ended up climbing a lot. And look, this strategy at worst, you're taking on the habits of someone who's much higher elo than you and should, at least in theory, make you a better player. Okay, let's get into the other reason why practicing might be making you worse, which is you're not using your time wisely. There's an old adage that says work smarter, not harder. Just because you've grinded for an entire day playing solo queue doesn't mean you're going to improve from it. There are other ways to get better aside from playing the game. While playing and practicing are essential parts of improving that should comprise a good amount of your time spent, it's oftentimes just as important to observe, study, and sometimes even just sit and think. Let's talk about ways you can be more efficient with how you practice. While you could sit through training and practice the same Riven combo for hours, you could develop yourself into a well-rounded player by cutting down that time spent on mechanical practice and instead focusing on a variety of other things. For example, studying matchups, taking time to learn some nuance behind builds or items, or even experiment. You can even try and practice 1v1s against someone who would allow you to practice your mechanics against an actual player rather than dummies or bots. Admittedly, practicing your mechanics specifically is a very good use of your time. However, practicing against bots is not going to solve your problem. So comparing going into a bot game versus going into a game with a person at your skill level or maybe even a little bit higher, you're always going to want to go with the real person. Now, sometimes that's not always possible. If you want to play against someone who's really better than you, go to ProGuides. But if you want to play someone around your skill level, why don't you just add someone in game after one of your games that you think would want to improve with you? That's a great way to make a new friend. Go into a game together and practice your mechanics. If you guys do that, maybe let's say once a day before a couple of your games, you guys are going to improve dramatically, and it's going to make the game a lot more enjoyable. Think about this as well. When you're studying for a test and you cram all that material into a single night before an exam, how well do you actually do? It's honestly pretty hit or miss. You might do well, you might not. You're probably not going to do as well as you could have done if you actually studied multiple days in advance. And that begs the other question is, how much of that information are you actually going to retain afterwards? If you're cramming, probably not much. And I know that a lot of you guys who are in high school or maybe college might think that that's not very valuable, but trust me, when you get to my age, old grandpa, 30 plus, you're going to wish you retained a lot of that information. The way that we learn anything is actually by spacing out the time we devote to learning. An hour every day for 8 days is going to be more valuable than 8 hours straight in one go. If you really think about it, it just makes sense because playing that many games straight is going to mentally fatigue you at some point, and you're going to get diminishing returns. You'll autopilot, you'll start thinking a lot less, and your play will get sloppy as well. What's more important is to make sure that there's consistency and that you're improving little by little, day by day. Practicing inefficiently and exhausting yourself can be taxing on your body and your mind. In fact, it can actually be detrimental to your growth as a player. Find some balance in your life, try to set aside some specific time to practice certain things, and if you find that your mechanics are lacking or you're struggling with a combo on a specific champion, set a timer and dedicate that amount of time to practicing in sandbox mode, and you'll see improvements in a couple weeks or less. Once you hit that timer, go focus on other stuff, and then get back into it again. Alright guys, so we've talked about a lot of topics in this video, so let me just break it down for you. Number 1, assess your habits. The first step is to assess what your habits are. Whether you do this by yourself or with a coach or a friend, you must analyze and evaluate yourself. See what you tend to do and determine what habits you have. Then look at those habits and decide if they're good ones or bad ones. You should have a bit of both. Give yourself a pat on the back for the good ones and then change the bad ones. Number 2, acknowledge what you're doing wrong. Now, if you've been constantly getting killed, or you've been greeting after a cannon minion and gotten heavily traded down, or been baited into overextending time and time again, anything like that, the first step is to acknowledge it. You have to be aware of it and make an active effort to change. If you don't, you'll get into the habit of constantly making those risky plays and constantly having your teammates getting pissed at you, throwing the game after game, and then it's a vicious cycle. You start hating the game, you start hating yourself, etc. We don't want any of that here. Take responsibility for the things you're doing wrong, commit to changing them. How you go about acknowledging it is up to you, but you have to make sure that you truly understand what you need to fix. We all have bad habits in all aspects of our lives, but how we improve them is what matters. Write down what you're doing wrong, especially if you notice that you do it regularly. You can even use a simple Word document, sticky note, or text file to serve as a reminder. Whenever you're about to start playing, just take a look at that sticky note. If it says, look at the minimap more, well, then you know you need to look at the minimap more. If it says, don't overextend, well, then now you know don't overextend. It'll just be there telling you, hey, don't do this. With enough conviction and awareness, you can gradually break out of bad habits and make sure that your practice is instead reinforcing good ones. Third, have a goal in mind with every practice session. We can always play for fun or play to win, and you can also improve while doing both. Regardless of why you play, if you have any intent to get better at League of Legends, or anything in life for that matter, make sure you have some sort of goal in mind every time you play. If you wrote down those bad habits, for example, you could start a day off telling yourself that your one goal is not to make the same mistake you took note of the previous time you played, or your goal might be to just get better at a specific mechanic, like pulling off an insect kick with Lee Sin. All my friends know that I'm never going to do that, so that will never be a goal of mine. Go ahead and practice whatever it is you're trying to get better at in training mode, and then try to use it against a real person, and then even in a real game. But just make sure you're not in my ranked game, otherwise I'm going to get very angry if you don't pull it off. I'm just kidding. 4, know when to take a break or end the day. So one thing I want to stress is that I want you guys to make sure you're self-aware. This is not just in the game, you should be self-aware in life. It makes your life a lot easier because whatever you do and whoever you are will align with reality and the way that people see the world. It'll make everything a lot easier, trust me. So if you've just been grinding ranked for a while and you're getting exhausted or tilted, it might be time to take a break. In between each rank session, take a deep breath. Do you feel fatigued? Do you feel tired? Do you feel stressed? Do you feel angry? If you are, take a break. Not only are you going to be wasting your time, you are going to be losing more games. Would you want to click that lock-in button if you know that you had 30% less chance of winning because you're stressed or tired? Probably not. You want to click that lock-in button when you're confident, when you know you're going to win. Alternatively, if you feel strong, if you feel good, if you feel poised when you click on that lock-in button, your percent increased chance of winning is probably higher, maybe like a 10% more of a chance of winning because you actually feel good. So if you're getting stressed, your growth is going to be limited, and that stress will push you into bad habits as well. Out of rage, you might play more aggressively than you would normally, you might overextend, you might be blinded to the minimap, you might just make a play without really thinking about it. Although it might be tempting to continue playing, end your sessions at reasonable times, get some sleep, get some rest. Trust me, you will grow as a player if you do this. Alright guys, before we conclude the video, if you guys do need extra help finding out your weaknesses in your play, go to ProGuides.com. We have Diamond, Master, and Challenger players ready to be your friends, ready to take your game to the next level. They will analyze any game you want, they will go into your games and help you improve and help you practice, and they will even play with you guys if that's the best way that you learn. Alright guys, that's it for me. If you guys found some value in this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you guys are interested in playing Wild Rift, we have an amazing Wild Rift channel we just launched. Would love if you guys check that out as well. Alright guys, that's it for the video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you on the Rift.